The employment agency manager, Patricia Whitmore, sat across from billionaire real estate mogul Marcus Chambers with an expression that could only be described as apologetic defeat. "Mr. Chambers, I'll be honest with you," she said, sliding a thick folder across the mahogany desk. "In my 23 years running this agency, I've never encountered a situation quite like yours. These are the files of the 17 nannies we've placed with your family over the past 6 months. 17 highly qualified, experienced childcare professionals. And not one of them lasted more than a week." Marcus ran his hand through his dark hair, exhaustion evident in every line of his face. At 38, he was one of New York's most successful developers, a man who'd built an empire from nothing. He could negotiate million-dollar deals, manage hundreds of employees, and navigate the cutthroat world of Manhattan real estate with ease. But his 5-year-old twin sons? They had defeated him utterly. "What's the common denominator?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "What reason do they all give for leaving?" Patricia opened the folder and began reading. Nanny number 1, Sarah Mitchell. 20 years of experience, impeccable references. She lasted 5 days. She said, and I quote, "Those children are not normal. They're not misbehaving in typical ways. There's something calculated about it, something almost menacing." Nanny number 2 lasted 4 days. Number 3 made it to day 6 before she called me in tears saying she couldn't take another moment. "And the others?" Marcus prompted, though hearing this recitation was like pressing on a bruise. "Similar stories," Patricia said. "They all described your sons as intelligent, manipulative, and seemingly determined to drive away any caregiver you hire. Mr. Chambers, I have to ask, have you had the boys evaluated? Psychologically, I mean." "By 4 different child psychologists," Marcus said wearily. All of them said the same thing. The twins are intellectually gifted, testing well above their age level. No signs of serious behavioral disorders, no red flags for any kind of pathology. They're just, he struggled to find the words, angry? Angry at the world, angry at me, and especially angry at anyone who tries to care for them. Patricia closed the folder with a sigh. "Mr. Chambers, I don't know what else we can do. We've sent you every qualified nanny in our database. We've even reached out to agencies in other cities. The problem is word has gotten around. Childcare professionals talk to each other. Your family's situation has gained a certain reputation." Marcus felt the familiar weight of guilt and frustration settle over him. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. "Emergency at home. Mrs. Chin just quit. Says she can't stay another hour. She's packing now." Mrs. Chin had been nanny number 17. She'd started on Monday. Today was Thursday. 4 days. She hadn't even made it a full week. Marcus showed the text to Patricia, who shook her head sympathetically. "I'm sorry, Mr. Chambers. I truly am. But I can't in good conscience send another nanny to your home. Not until we figure out what's really going on with those boys." An hour later, Marcus arrived at his penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park to find chaos. Mrs. Chin, a stern woman in her 60s who'd come with outstanding credentials and references from 3 ambassador families, was hurrying toward the elevator with her suitcase, her face red with anger and what looked like cake frosting in her hair. "Mrs. Chin, please wait," Marcus started. "No," she said firmly. "I don't care how much you're paying. Those boys are demons. Actual demons. Today they locked me in the pantry for 2 hours. 2 hours, Mr. Chambers. When I finally got out, they destroyed the kitchen, released crickets throughout the apartment. Where they even got crickets, I don't know, and somehow managed to order $500 worth of pizza to be delivered to your neighbor's apartment. The neighbor, by the way, is threatening to sue. I'll pay for everything, of course. I'll talk to the neighbor. Please, if you could just..." "And that's not even the worst part," Mrs. Chin continued as if he hadn't spoken. "The worst part is the way they look at you. Like they're studying you. Calculating. Those boys aren't just misbehaving, Mr. Chambers. They're conducting warfare. And I'm too old for this battlefield." She stepped into the elevator and Marcus didn't try to stop her again. What could he say? She was right. He found his sons in their bedroom, sitting on their respective beds looking angelic. That was the thing about Ethan and Elliot. They were beautiful children. Dark curly hair like their mother's, bright blue eyes, delicate features. When they were quiet like this, they looked like cherubs from a Renaissance painting. But Marcus knew better. "Mrs. Chin left," he said flatly. "Did she?" Ethan, the older twin by 3 minutes, asked with feigned innocence. "That's too bad. We liked her." "You locked her in the pantry." "We were playing hide and seek," Elliot chimed in. "She must have gotten confused." And the crickets? What crickets? They said in unison, their faces perfect masks of confusion. Marcus sank down onto the small bench between their beds, too tired for this battle. Why do you do this? Every single time I hire someone to help take care of you, you drive them away. Don't you understand that I'm trying to help? I can't work from home every day. I have a company to run. I need someone here who can. We don't need anyone, Ethan interrupted. We have each other. We don't want strangers taking care of us. They're not strangers. They're trained professionals who. They're not, Mom, Elliot said quietly. The room fell silent. There it was. The truth that underlay all of this chaos and acting out. The wound that wouldn't heal. Marcus looked at his sons, seeing past the mischief to the pain underneath. Their mother, Olivia, had died 18 months ago in a car accident. One moment Marcus had a wife, a partner, a woman who balanced his intensity with her warmth, who loved their boys with her whole heart. The next moment she was gone, and he was left trying to be both mother and father to two grieving 5-year-olds who'd lost the center of their world. I know they're not Mom, Marcus said gently. No one can replace Mom. But that doesn't mean we can't accept help from good people who want to care for you. We don't want care, Ethan said stubbornly. We want you. But you're always at work. I work to provide for us, to make sure we have everything we need. We don't need everything, Elliot said, his voice rising. We need you. But you're never here. You're always at the office or on the phone or in meetings. And when you are here, you're trying to make us be good for some new nanny we've never met. We're tired of it. Before Marcus could respond, both boys burst into tears. Real tears this time, not the calculated crying they sometimes used to manipulate nannies. These were tears of genuine pain and frustration and grief. Marcus moved to sit between them, pulling both boys into his arms. They resisted for a moment, then collapsed against him, sobbing. I'm sorry, Marcus murmured. I'm so sorry. I know I haven't been there enough. I know I've been trying to solve this problem with money and hired help instead of being the father you need. I'm sorry. They stayed like that for a long time, the three of them holding each other and crying together for the first time in months. Marcus realized with shame that he'd been so focused on managing the logistics of their lives. Finding childcare, keeping his business running, maintaining the appearance of having everything under control, that he'd neglected the most important thing. Being present for his son's grief and his own. Eventually the tears subsided. Marcus pulled back and looked at his boys' tear-stained faces. Here's what we're going to do, he said. No more nannies for now. I'm going to rearrange my schedule at work. I'll be here more, mornings and evenings every day, and I'll work from home at least 2 days a week. But I still need some help during the day. Just someone to be here to make sure you're safe and fed. Can we compromise on that? What kind of help? Ethan asked suspiciously. I don't know yet, Marcus admitted. But I promise I'll involve you in the decision. No more strangers showing up unannounced. Okay. The boys nodded reluctantly, and Marcus took that as the victory it was. That evening, after the twins were finally asleep, Marcus sat in his study nursing a whiskey and trying to figure out what to do. The employment agency had essentially fired him as a client. His neighbors were complaining about the chaos emanating from his apartment. His work was suffering because he was constantly dealing with childcare crises. He was at his wits' end. His phone rang. It was his mother, Catherine, calling from her retirement community in Florida. Marcus, darling, I heard about Mrs. Chen, she said without preamble. Honestly, I'm not surprised. Those boys have been crying out for attention for months. I know, Mom. We talked about it today. I'm going to make changes. Good. Because I have a suggestion. Do you remember my friend Elena Rodriguez? Her daughter Carmen works as a domestic assistant. Cleaning, cooking, that sort of thing. She's been looking for a new position. From what Elena tells me, Carmen is wonderful with children. She raised 4 of her own and she has grandchildren she adores. She's not a trained nanny, mind you, but she's a kind, patient woman. Maybe that's what the boys need. Not another professional, but just someone warm and genuine. Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Do you think she'd be interested? I should warn you, the twins have been difficult. Elena mentioned that Carmen specifically works with difficult situations. She seems to have a gift for it. I can have Elena give her your number if you'd like. Please, Marcus said. At this point, I'm willing to try anything. 2 days later, Carmen Rodriguez arrived for an interview. She was in her early 50s, with warm brown eyes, graying hair pulled back in a neat bun, and a smile that seemed genuinely kind rather than professionally polite. Marcus had half expected the twins to launch their usual assault. Rudeness, tricks, attempts to scare her off. But to his surprise, when Carmen arrived, the boys merely watched her from the doorway of the living room, unusually quiet. "You must be Ethan and Elliot," Carmen said, addressing them directly before she'd even formally greeted Marcus. "Your grandmother Catherine told me so much about you. She showed me pictures, but you're even more handsome in person." The boys blinked, surprised at being addressed as the priority rather than an afterthought. "How do you know our grandmother?" Ethan asked. "She and my mother are friends. They play bridge together every Wednesday at the community center. Your grandmother talks about you boys all the time. She says you're incredibly smart and that you love building things with Legos." "We do," Elliot admitted cautiously. "We built a whole castle. It has a moat and everything." "I'd love to see it sometime," Carmen said. "If you want to show me, that is. No pressure." Then she turned to Marcus. "Mr. Chambers, why don't you and I talk for a few minutes? Boys, you're welcome to join us or not, whatever you prefer." They ended up sitting in the living room, the twins hovering in the doorway, clearly listening but not quite ready to fully participate. "I'm going to be honest with you, Ms. Rodriguez." "Carmen, please." "Carmen. I'm sure you've heard about the situation with the nannies. My sons have been through a lot. They lost their mother 18 months ago, and they haven't handled it well. They've driven away 17 qualified childcare professionals in 6 months. They're angry and acting out, and I don't know how to help them." Carmen nodded thoughtfully. "Mr. Chambers, can I tell you what I see? I see 2 little boys who are hurting and who feel like they've lost control of their lives. They lost their mother, which was traumatic and not their choice. Then their father, understandably overwhelmed, started bringing in stranger after stranger to care for them. Also not their choice. So they found the one thing they could control, whether those strangers stayed or left. And they chose to make them leave." Marcus stared at her. In 1 minute, this woman had articulated what 4 psychologists had taken months to explain. "You're right," he said. "That's exactly what's happening. The question is," Carmen continued, "do they want me to leave too? Or are they tired enough of this battle to try something different?" She raised her voice slightly, directing her next words to the doorway where the twins were lurking. "What do you boys think? Do you want to try running me off, or shall we attempt something new?" There was a long silence. Then Ethan stepped into the room, Elliot right behind him. "What kind of something new?" Ethan asked. "Well, I'm not a nanny," Carmen said. "I'm not here to follow you around enforcing rules and schedules. What I am is someone who knows how to run a household, cooking, cleaning, making sure things run smoothly. And I'm someone who's raised 4 kids of her own, so I understand that children are people with feelings and opinions, not just little robots to be programmed." "What happened to your kids?" Elliot asked. "Are they dead too?" Marcus winced at the bluntness, but Carmen didn't flinch. "No, sweetie, they're all grown up now. They're adults with their own lives and families. I have 7 grandchildren who I love very much. But they live far away and I miss having young people around." "Don't you get annoyed with kids?" Ethan asked suspiciously. "All the other nannies acted like they liked us at first, but they were lying." "I imagine I'll get annoyed sometimes," Carmen said honestly. "Everyone gets annoyed occasionally, that's normal. But annoyed isn't the same as not caring. I can be frustrated with you and still like you. Those things aren't mutually exclusive." The twins exchanged glances, having one of their silent twin conversations. "What if we do something bad?" Elliot asked. "What if we play a trick or make a mess? Then we'll clean it up together and we'll talk about why you did it," Carmen said simply. "Look, boys, I'm not going to pretend you'll never make me mad. And I'm not going to promise I'll never make mistakes or say the wrong thing. What I can promise is that I'll be honest with you and I'll listen to you, and I won't give up on you just because things get hard." "Everyone gives up," Ethan said quietly. "Everyone leaves." "Your mother didn't want to leave," Carmen said gently. "She died. That's different from choosing to leave. And your father hasn't left. He's right here trying his best to figure out what you need." "But he's always working," Elliot protested. "He's a grown-up with responsibilities," Carmen said. "That's how life works. But here's the thing, maybe if you boys and I can figure out how to work together, your dad won't have to worry so much about whether you're okay during the day. And then maybe he'll have more energy to spend time with you in the evenings and weekends. Would you like that?" Both boys nodded. "Okay then," Carmen said. "Here's what I propose. Let me work here for 1 week. Just 1 week. If at the end of that week you really can't stand me, I'll leave and no hard feelings. But during that week I want you to give me a real chance. No tricks designed to drive me away, no tests to see how much I can take. Just, let's try being honest with each other and see what happens. Deal?" The twins looked at each other again, then at their father, then back at Carmen. "Deal?" they said simultaneously. Carmen started the next morning. Marcus had to leave early for a meeting, and he found himself genuinely anxious about what he'd find when he returned home. Would Carmen still be there? Or would she be another casualty of his son's campaign of chaos? He needn't have worried. When he came home that evening, he found Carmen in the kitchen making dinner while the twins sat at the counter doing a science experiment involving baking soda and vinegar. "Dad, look!" Elliot shouted when he saw Marcus. "We're making a volcano." "Carmen showed us how," Ethan added. "Did you know that when you mix an acid and a base they react and make carbon dioxide gas? That's what makes the bubbles." Marcus stared. His sons were enthusiastic. Educational content was happening. No one was crying or covered in mystery substances. It seemed almost too good to be true. "How was your day?" he asked Carmen cautiously. "Good," she said, stirring something that smelled amazing on the stove. "We had a few rough moments this morning. The boys tested some boundaries, which is completely normal and expected. But we talked about it, established some ground rules together, and the afternoon has been lovely." "What kind of testing?" Marcus asked, concerned. "Nothing catastrophic," Carmen assured him. "They tried to tell me you let them eat candy for breakfast, which I'm guessing isn't true. When I said we needed to verify that with you, they admitted they were testing whether I was gullible. We had a conversation about honesty, and they agreed to be straight with me if I'd be straight with them." "And that worked?" Marcus asked, amazed. "So far," Carmen said. "We also talked about their schedule. I learned that several of the previous nannies had very rigid ideas about what the boys should be doing every moment of the day, structured activities, educational games, that sort of thing. The boys felt controlled and micromanaged. So we negotiated. They have to do their reading and math work that their tutor assigns, and they have to help me with basic chores. But otherwise they get free time to play however they want." "That seems reasonable," Marcus said, wondering why none of the previous highly trained nannies had thought of simply asking the children what they needed. "The key is respect," Carmen said. "I respect that they're intelligent people with preferences and feelings. They respect that I have a job to do and that certain things are non-negotiable for safety reasons. We're figuring out the middle ground." That evening, for the first time in months, Marcus had dinner with his sons where no one was upset or defiant. They talked about their day, laughed at Elliot's jokes, and made plans for the weekend. After the boys were in bed, Marcus found Carmen cleaning up the kitchen. "Thank you," he said. "Today was... I don't know what you did, but thank you." "I didn't do anything magical," Carmen said. "I just treated them like people instead of problems to be solved." "Will you stay?" Marcus asked. "Past the trial week, I mean? Will you stay as long as we need you?" Carmen smiled. "Let's take it 1 week at a time." "But yes, Mr. Chambers, I'll stay." As she left that evening, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in months: hope. Maybe, just maybe, they'd finally found the right person to help his family heal. What Marcus didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that Carmen was carrying a secret. A secret about his son's past, about the day their mother died, and about something the twins had witnessed that no child should ever see. A secret that, once revealed, would change everything. But for now, for this one evening, Marcus allowed himself to simply be grateful that his sons were smiling again. The real story was just beginning. Carmen lasted the full week, then another, then another. By the end of the first month, she had become an integral part of the Chambers household in a way none of the previous nannies had managed. The twins had stopped acting out, started engaging with their schoolwork, and even began asking Marcus to play with them instead of demanding his attention through destructive behavior. It seemed like a miracle. But Marcus was beginning to notice something strange. Not about his sons, but about Carmen herself. It started small. He'd come home from work and find Carmen sitting with the twins, the three of them talking quietly. When he'd enter the room, they'd go silent, or quickly change the subject to something innocuous like homework or what to have for dinner. At first, Marcus dismissed it. Maybe they were planning a surprise for him, or maybe Carmen was helping the boys process their feelings about their mother and they needed privacy for that. But as the weeks went on, the secret conversations became more frequent, and Marcus started noticing other things too. Carmen would sometimes get a look on her face when she thought no one was watching. A look of deep sadness mixed with guilt. She'd stare at the boys with an expression Marcus couldn't quite interpret. Regret? Worry? Fear? And the twins themselves seemed different with Carmen than with anyone else. They were protective of her in a way that seemed out of proportion for someone they'd known only a few weeks. When Marcus's mother visited and made an innocuous comment about possibly finding someone younger and more energetic to help out, Both boys had immediately and vehemently defended Carmen. "We don't want anyone else," Ethan had shouted. "Carmen understands us. You can't make her leave," Elliot had added, near tears. "You promised?" Marcus had quickly assured them he had no intention of letting Carmen go, but the intensity of their reaction had puzzled him. One evening, about 6 weeks after Carmen had started working for them, Marcus came home earlier than usual. He'd left an important file on his home office desk and needed to retrieve it for an evening meeting. He let himself in quietly, not wanting to disturb anyone. As he headed toward his office, he heard voices coming from the twins' bedroom. Carmen's voice, low and serious, and the boys responding. Marcus knew he shouldn't eavesdrop. Privacy was important, and Carmen and the boys were entitled to their own conversations. But something in Carmen's tone, urgent, almost pleading, made him pause in the hallway. "I know it's hard," Carmen was saying, "but we need to tell him. He deserves to know the truth." "But what if he sends us away?" Elliot's voice, small and frightened. "What if he doesn't want us anymore once he knows?" "He's your father," Carmen said firmly. "He loves you. Nothing will change that." "You don't know that," Ethan said. "We're bad. We're broken. That's what everyone says. That's why the nannies left." "You're not bad and you're not broken," Carmen insisted. "You're traumatized. There's a big difference. And your father needs to understand what happened, what you witnessed." Marcus felt his blood run cold. Witnessed? What had his sons witnessed? "But we promised we wouldn't tell," Elliot said, crying now. "We promised her. It was the last thing she said." "I know, Mijo. I know. But some promises aren't meant to be kept. Some secrets are too heavy for children to carry." Marcus's mind was racing. What secret? What had happened? He must have made some sound because suddenly the conversation stopped. A moment later, Carmen appeared in the doorway of the twins' room. When she saw Marcus in the hallway, her face paled. "Mr. Chambers. I didn't hear you come in." "Obviously." Marcus tried to keep his voice calm, but he could hear the anger and confusion seeping through. "What's going on, Carmen? What secret? What did my sons witness?" Carmen's hands were shaking. "I think we need to talk. But not here. Not where the boys can hear." "Are my children in danger?" Marcus demanded. "Is someone hurting them?" "No. Nothing like that. But there's something you don't know. Something about the day your wife died." Marcus felt the world tilt. "What about it?" "Please," Carmen said. "Let me put the boys to bed first. Then we'll talk. I promise I'll tell you everything." It was one of the longest hours of Marcus's life, waiting for Carmen to settle the twins and come to his study. He paced, his mind conjuring increasingly horrible scenarios. What could have happened that day? What had his sons seen? Olivia had died in a car accident. Single-vehicle collision, the police had said. She'd been driving home from a doctor's appointment when her car left the road and hit a tree. The police investigation had concluded she'd fallen asleep at the wheel. Tragic, but no one's fault. Just a terrible accident. The boys had been at home with their previous nanny when it happened. Or at least that's what Marcus had been told. Finally, Carmen entered the study and closed the door behind her. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past hour. "Before I start," she said, "I need you to understand something. I didn't come to work for you by accident. Your mother didn't just happen to recommend me. I sought this position out deliberately." Marcus felt confusion mixing with his fear. "What? What possible reason?" "Because I knew your wife," Carmen said quietly. "And I knew what happened the day she died. And I couldn't live with myself knowing that your sons were carrying that burden alone." "What are you talking about?" Marcus's voice rose despite his effort to stay calm. "How did you know Olivia?" "She never mentioned anyone named Carmen Rodriguez. She knew me as Carmen Diaz. That was my married name. I've gone back to my maiden name since my divorce." Carmen took a shaky breath. "Mr. Chambers, Marcus, your wife didn't fall asleep at the wheel. She had a seizure." The words didn't make sense. A seizure? Olivia didn't have seizures. She wasn't epileptic. No, she wasn't. But she had a brain tumor. The room spun. "What? No. That's not," she would have told me. "We would have known." "She'd only just found out," Carmen said gently. "That's what the doctor's appointment was that day. She'd been having headaches for weeks. Blurred vision. Moments of confusion. She finally went to see a neurologist and they found a mass. A large one. She was on her way home to tell you when she had the seizure and crashed." Marcus sank into his chair, his legs unable to support him. "How do you know all this? Who the hell are you?" I was a nurse at the neurologist's office, Carmen said. I was the one who sat with Olivia after she got the diagnosis. She was devastated, terrified. She sat in the consultation room and cried for an hour. I stayed with her. We talked. She told me about you, about the twins. About how much she loved her family and how afraid she was of leaving you. Why didn't you tell me this? Marcus's voice broke. When you came to work here, why didn't you say something? Because I needed to talk to the boys first, Carmen said. You see, I wasn't the only one who knew about Olivia's diagnosis. The twins knew too. Marcus stared at her in shock. That's impossible. They were home with the nanny. No, Carmen said softly. They weren't. That's the secret they've been keeping. The secret that's been tearing them apart. She sat down across from him, her face grave. When Olivia left the doctor's office that day, she was in no condition to drive. I knew it, and I tried to convince her to let me call someone to pick her up. But she was in shock, not thinking clearly. She insisted she was fine. And Carmen's voice broke. I let her go. I should have stopped her, should have called you, should have done something. But I let her leave and she died because of it. I've carried that guilt every day since. The boys, Marcus said, his mind struggling to process everything. What do they have to do with this? The nanny that day, Mrs. Henderson, I believe her name was, she got a phone call. A family emergency. She asked Olivia to come home early to watch the boys. Olivia was so disoriented from the diagnosis that she agreed without thinking. She went home and picked up the twins, telling Mrs. Henderson to go handle her emergency. She said she was just going to drive the boys around for a bit while she figured out how to tell you about the tumor. Oh God, Marcus breathed, understanding dawning with horrible clarity. They were in the car. When she seized. When she crashed. They were in the car. Carmen nodded, tears streaming down her face. The twins were in the back seat. They saw everything. They saw their mother suddenly go rigid, saw the car leave the road, saw the impact. Ethan managed to unbuckle himself and Elliot. He got them both out of the car. A passerby found them on the road, crying next to the wreck. The police report said they were at home, Marcus said numbly. I was told they were at home, that the nanny had told them about the accident. Because that's what the boys told everyone, Carmen said. When the police found them, when the paramedics arrived, Ethan and Elliot both insisted they hadn't been in the car. They said they'd been at home and had just run to the scene when they heard the crash. They were in shock, traumatized, and they maintained that story consistently. Eventually, everyone believed them. But why? Marcus asked desperately. Why would they lie? Because of what Olivia said to them right before she seized, Carmen said, her voice barely above a whisper. In those last few moments of consciousness, when she realized something was terribly wrong, she told the boys to tell everyone they hadn't been in the car. She made them promise. I think she knew she was about to crash, knew she was dying, and she didn't want you to blame yourself for not being there. She didn't want the boys to feel responsible. So she made them promise to keep it secret. Marcus felt like he couldn't breathe. How do you know what she said to them? Because Ethan told me, Carmen said. 3 weeks ago. He broke down one evening after you'd left for work. He told me everything, how their mother had been acting strange that afternoon, how she'd suddenly picked them up and said they were going for a drive, how she'd started crying while she was driving and telling them how much she loved them. And then how she'd suddenly said, something's wrong, and told them to unbuckle and get ready to get out of the car. How she'd made them promise, in those final seconds, to tell everyone they'd been at home. And then what? Marcus asked through his tears. What happened after the crash? Ethan got them both out. Your wife was unconscious, bleeding. Ethan tried to wake her up. He held her hand and begged her not to die. Elliot was screaming. A man in another car stopped and called 911. When the police arrived, Ethan told the lie his mother had asked him to tell. And he's been living with it ever since. Marcus put his head in his hands and sobbed. For his wife, for his sons, for the unbearable weight 2 5-year-old children had been carrying for 18 months. Why didn't they tell me? He finally managed to ask. Why didn't they tell me the truth? Because they made a promise to their dying mother, Carmen said gently. And because they were 5 years old and traumatized and terrified. And then as time went on, the lie became harder to undo. They were afraid you'd be angry that they'd lied. Afraid you'd think it was their fault their mother had crashed. Afraid of so many things. The acting out, Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. The driving away the nannies. They were trying to punish themselves. And trying to maintain control, Carmen added. They'd experienced the most traumatic loss of control imaginable, watching their mother die in front of them, helpless to stop it. Driving away the nannies was their way of feeling powerful again, of having some control over their lives. Marcus looked at Carmen with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. You said you felt guilty about what happened. That you should have stopped Olivia from driving. Is that why you came here? To ease your own guilt? Partially, Carmen admitted. I've carried the weight of that day for 18 months. I couldn't save Olivia, but I thought maybe I could help her sons. When I heard through my mother, who really is friends with your mother, that you were struggling with the twins, that no nanny could handle them, I realized what must be happening. I realized they were probably carrying trauma from that day that no one knew about. So yes, I came here partly for myself. To try to make amends in the only way I could. But also for them. Because they needed someone who knew the truth, who could help them carry it. Does anyone else know? Marcus asked. No. Just the three of us now. And the boys have been terrified to tell you. They think you'll hate them for lying. They think you'll send them away. Send them away? Marcus felt fresh tears starting. They're my children. I could never. He stopped, unable to continue. I know that, Carmen said. You know that. But they're 6 years old and traumatized and not thinking rationally. They need you to tell them. They need you to hear the truth and show them that you still love them. Marcus stood up, his decision made. Where are they? Are they asleep? I doubt it, Carmen said. They know we're talking. They're probably terrified right now. Marcus headed toward the twins' room with Carmen following. When he opened the door, he found both boys sitting up in their beds, holding hands across the space between them, their faces pale with fear. Daddy? Ethan said in a small voice. Are you mad? Marcus crossed the room and sat on the floor between their beds, pulling both boys down to sit with him. He wrapped his arms around them and held them close. I'm not mad, he said. I'm heartbroken that you've been carrying this alone for so long. But I'm not mad at you. I could never be mad at you. But we lied, Elliot sobbed. We lied to everyone. About being in the car. About what happened. You were 5 years old and you just watched your mother die, Marcus said, his voice breaking. You were traumatized and scared, and you were trying to keep a promise to someone you loved. That's not lying, that's being a brave little boy in an impossible situation. Mommy made us promise, Ethan said, tears streaming down his face. She said we had to tell everyone we weren't in the car. She said it was really important. We didn't want to break our promise to her. I know, buddy. I know. Marcus held them tighter. But sometimes promises are too big for kids to keep. Sometimes adults ask for things without realizing how heavy those things are. Your mom was sick, her brain was sick, and she wasn't thinking clearly. She was trying to protect us, but she didn't realize she was hurting you by making you keep that secret. We saw her die, Elliot whispered. We saw the car go off the road. We saw her bleeding. Ethan tried to wake her up, but she wouldn't wake up. I tried, Daddy, Ethan said, his whole body shaking with sobs. I tried so hard. I held her hand and I told her to wake up, but she wouldn't. And then the ambulance came and they took her away and we never saw her again. Marcus was crying so hard he could barely speak. You did everything you could. You were so brave. You got yourself and your brother out of the car. You tried to help your mom. You did everything a child could possibly do. But we should have done more. Ethan cried. We should have, I don't know, we should have saved her. No, Marcus said firmly, pulling back to look at both boys' faces. Listen to me. What happened to your mother was not your fault. She had a tumor in her brain, a growth that made her sick. That tumor caused her to have a seizure, which made her lose control of the car. There was nothing you could have done to stop it. Nothing I could have done. Nothing anyone could have done. Do you understand? But if we'd stayed home like we were supposed to, Elliot started, then your mother would have been driving alone, and she still would have had the seizure and she still would have crashed, Marcus interrupted gently. The only difference is you wouldn't have been able to say goodbye. You wouldn't have heard her tell you how much she loved you in those final moments. In a terrible way, you got something precious that I didn't get, you got to be with her at the end. The boys stared at him, this perspective clearly never having occurred to them. She did say she loved us, Ethan said quietly. Right before the crash. She was crying and saying how much she loved us and how we were the best thing that ever happened to her. And she told us to be brave, Elliot added. She said we were strong and brave and we could handle anything. She was right, Marcus said. You are strong and brave. You survived something no child should have to survive. And you've been carrying this secret for 18 months, thinking you were protecting me, thinking you were keeping your promise to your mom. That took incredible strength. But you don't have to carry it anymore. I know now. And I'm so sorry, so sorry, that you had to go through any of that alone. Are you sure you're not mad? Ethan asked, his voice small and uncertain. We lied for a really long time. I'm not mad, Marcus promised. I'm sad that you felt you couldn't tell me. I'm angry at myself for not realizing something was wrong, for not understanding why you were acting out. But I'm not mad at you. Not even a little bit. What about all the nannies we drove away? Elliot asked. We were really mean to them. Marcus took a deep breath. Okay, we're going to talk about that. What you did to those nannies, the tricks, the pranks, the deliberate misbehavior, that wasn't okay. Even though you were hurting, even though you were dealing with trauma, you still treated people badly. We're going to need to talk about making amends for that. Maybe writing apology letters. Maybe doing some volunteer work to learn about treating people with kindness even when you're going through hard times. Can we agree on that? Both boys nodded solemnly. But, Marcus continued, I also understand why you did it. You were trying to push people away because you were afraid of losing someone else you cared about. You were trying to stay in control of a world that felt out of control. That makes sense. It wasn't the right way to handle those feelings, but it makes sense. We didn't try to drive Carmen away, Ethan said, glancing at Carmen, who was standing quietly in the doorway. She's different. Why is she different? Marcus asked, though he thought he knew the answer. Because she knew Mommy, Elliot said. She was there the day Mommy found out she was sick. She's the only grown-up who understands what really happened. Marcus looked at Carmen, seeing her fully for the first time. Not just as the woman who'd miraculously managed his impossible children, but as someone who'd been carrying her own burden of grief and guilt. Carmen, he said. Come here, please. Carmen approached hesitantly, and Marcus gestured for her to sit with them. She settled on the floor, and immediately both twins reached for her hands. I need to say something to you, Marcus said. What happened to Olivia was not your fault. You were a nurse doing your job. You can't force an adult patient to accept help they're refusing. The tumor, the seizure, the crash, none of that was because of anything you did or didn't do. Carmen's eyes filled with tears. But I could have insisted. I could have called you myself, told you she needed to be picked up. And she would have told you she was fine and left anyway, Marcus said. Olivia was stubborn. Once she made up her mind about something, there was no changing it. You know that if you spent any time with her at all. Carmen laughed through her tears. She did tell me about her philosophy on life. Something about not letting fear make decisions for you. That was Olivia, Marcus said, his own tears falling freely. She lived life on her own terms right up until the end. That was one of the things I loved most about her. It was also one of the most infuriating things about her. But it wasn't your fault. Just like it wasn't the boy's fault. Sometimes terrible things just happen, and there's no one to blame. They sat together in a circle on the floor. Marcus, Carmen, Ethan, and Elliot, all crying, all holding on to each other, all finally sharing the grief they'd been carrying alone. After a while, Elliot asked quietly, Daddy? What happens now? Now that you know the truth? Now we heal, Marcus said simply. We're going to get you boys into therapy with someone who specializes in childhood trauma. We're going to talk about your mom more, not less, about the good memories and the hard ones. We're going to figure out how to live with this loss together, as a family, instead of everyone suffering alone. And Carmen? Ethan asked anxiously. Does she have to leave now that you know why she came? Marcus looked at Carmen, who looked back at him with uncertainty in her eyes. Carmen, Marcus said. You came here under false pretenses. You could have told me from the beginning who you were and why you wanted to work here. But you didn't. I know, Carmen said. I'm sorry. I should have been honest with you. I knew you wouldn't hire me if you knew the truth. You'd think I was some kind of guilt-driven interloper trying to ease my conscience. And maybe I was. But I also genuinely wanted to help these boys. You did help them, Marcus said. You helped them more than anyone else has been able to. You saw past their behavior to their pain. You earned their trust. You gave them a safe space to finally share their secret. Do you think I'd want you to leave after all that? I don't know, Carmen admitted. I wouldn't blame you if you wanted me gone. This whole situation is complicated and probably inappropriate and— Stay, Marcus interrupted. Please. The boys trust you. They need you. And honestly, I think you need them too. You need to forgive yourself for something that was never your fault to begin with. Maybe helping them heal will help you heal too. Are you sure? Carmen asked. Yes, both boys said immediately in unison. Marcus smiled. That's 2 votes. And I make 3. So yes, I'm sure. Stay. Be part of our family's healing. Carmen nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Over the next few days, the Chambers household underwent a transformation. Marcus took a full week off work, something he'd never done before, to focus entirely on his sons. He found them a trauma therapist, Dr. Sarah Kim, who specialized in children who'd witnessed traumatic events. The first session was difficult. The boys had to recount the accident in detail, had to describe what they'd seen and felt and experienced. But Dr. Kim was gentle and patient, and she helped them understand that their reactions, the nightmares, the acting out, the fear, were all normal responses to abnormal trauma. "You're not broken," Dr. Kim told them. "Your brains are working exactly the way they're supposed to work when something scary happens. Your minds are trying to protect you by making you push people away before they can leave you. But now we're going to teach your brains that not everyone leaves, that some people stay, and that it's safe to let people in." Marcus also insisted that Carmen join several of the therapy sessions. Dr. Kim agreed that it was important for Carmen to work through her own guilt and grief surrounding Olivia's death. "You're all connected through this tragedy," Dr. Kim explained. "You all loved Olivia in different ways. Marcus as a husband, the boys as sons, and Carmen as someone who witnessed her pain and tried to help. You're all entitled to grieve, and you're all deserving of healing." As the weeks went by, the entire family began to open up in ways they never had before. Marcus started sharing stories about Olivia with the boys, not just the sanitized happy memories but the real, complicated truth of who she was. Her stubbornness, her adventurous spirit, her occasional temper, her fierce love for her family. "Your mom wasn't perfect," Marcus told the boys one evening as they looked through photo albums together. "She made mistakes. She could be impulsive and sometimes reckless. But she loved with her whole heart and she lived authentically, and that's something to admire even when it's also frustrating. I think that's why she told us to say we weren't in the car," Ethan said thoughtfully. "She was being impulsive. She didn't think about how hard it would be for us to keep that secret." "Probably," Marcus agreed. "She was trying to protect us from guilt and blame, but she didn't realize she was putting that guilt and blame on you instead. If she'd had time to think it through, she never would have asked that of you." "I forgive her," Elliot said quietly, "for making us promise. I know she was trying to help." "I forgive her too," Ethan added. "And I think I forgive myself for not being able to save her." Marcus pulled both boys into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you both. That's incredibly mature and brave." Carmen too began to heal. In therapy, she worked through her feelings of guilt and responsibility. Dr. Kim helped her understand that while she wished she'd done more that day, she had acted within the boundaries of her professional role and Olivia's autonomy as an adult patient. "You can't save people from themselves," Dr. Kim told her gently. "You can offer help, provide resources, express concern. But ultimately, adults have the right to make their own choices, even when those choices are unwise. Olivia chose to drive that day despite your concerns. That was her choice, not yours." One evening, about 3 months after the truth had come out, Marcus found Carmen in the kitchen after the boys had gone to bed. She was baking cookies, something she did when she was processing difficult emotions. "Can we talk?" Marcus asked. "Of course." Carmen gestured to the kitchen table and they both sat down. "I want to thank you," Marcus said, "for everything you've done for this family. For my sons. For me." "You don't need to thank me," Carmen said. "I'm just glad I could help." "No, I do need to thank you. Because you didn't just help, you saved us. Before you came, we were all drowning separately. The boys in their trauma and guilt, me and my inability to reach them. We were a family in name only, just 3 people living in the same space but unable to connect. You changed that. The boys did the hard work," Carmen said. "They're the ones who chose to trust me, to open up, to start healing. With your guidance," Marcus pointed out. "Carmen, I want you to know that you're not just an employee anymore. You're family. The boys see you that way and so do I." Carmen's eyes welled with tears. "That means more to me than you know. After my divorce, after my own children grew up and moved away, I felt lost. I felt like I didn't have a purpose anymore. Working with your family, helping the boys heal, being part of your lives, it's given me back something I thought I'd lost." "We need each other," Marcus said simply. "That's what family is. People who need each other and choose to show up anyway." Several weeks later, the family decided to visit Olivia's grave together. Something Marcus had been doing alone, and something the boys had been refusing to do since the funeral. "I think I'm ready," Ethan said one morning at breakfast. "I want to go see Mom's grave. I want to tell her that I kept her secret but now Dad knows and it's okay." "Me too," Elliot agreed. And I want to tell her about Carmen and about therapy and about how we're doing better now. So that Saturday, Marcus, Carmen, Ethan, and Elliot drove to the cemetery together. The boys brought flowers, sunflowers which had been Olivia's favorite, and drawings they'd made. At the gravestone, both boys stood silent for a long moment. Then Ethan stepped forward and placed his sunflowers on the grave. "Hi, Mom," he said softly. "We're sorry we didn't visit before. We were scared. But we're here now." He paused, then continued. "Dad knows about the accident. About us being in the car. About the promise you made us make. He's not mad. He says it's not our fault. He says it's not anybody's fault." Elliot added his flowers and his drawing. "We miss you so much, Mom. Every single day. But we're okay now. We have Dad and we have Carmen, she's really nice, you'd like her, and we're going to therapy and learning how to be sad without being bad. We're trying to make you proud." Marcus stood behind his sons with his hands on their shoulders, his own tears falling silently. Carmen hung back, giving the family space, but Marcus reached out and pulled her forward. "Olivia," Marcus said, addressing the gravestone as if his wife could hear him. "I brought someone to meet you. This is Carmen. She was with you that last day when you got your diagnosis. She tried to help you. She's been helping our boys too, helping all of us heal. I think you'd be grateful to her like I am. I think you'd want her to be part of our family like we do." Carmen knelt by the gravestone and placed her own bouquet of flowers, white roses. "Olivia, I'm so sorry I couldn't do more for you that day. I'm sorry you had to face that diagnosis alone. But I promise you your family is not alone now. Your boys are loved and protected. Your husband is healing. They're all going to be okay. I'll make sure of it." They stood together at the grave for a long time, not speaking, just being present with their grief and with each other. When they finally left, walking back to the car hand in hand, all four of them felt lighter somehow. The secret was out, the truth was known, and the healing had truly begun. That evening, after the boys were asleep, Marcus and Carmen sat on the penthouse balcony looking out over the city lights. "Do you ever wonder what Olivia would think?" Carmen asked. "About all of this? About me being here?" "Every day," Marcus admitted. "And I think she'd be grateful. I think she'd be happy that someone who knew her pain, who tried to help her in those final hours, is now here helping the people she loved most. There's a symmetry to it that feels almost meant to be." "I never expected this," Carmen said quietly. "When I came to work here, I thought I'd help the boys deal with their trauma and then move on. I didn't expect to become part of the family. I didn't expect to care this much." "Life rarely goes according to plan," Marcus said with a slight smile. "I learned that when Olivia died. Sometimes the universe throws you curveballs and all you can do is adapt. Sometimes the person who shows up to help comes with their own complicated history and motivations. But that doesn't make their help any less valuable." "Thank you for letting me stay," Carmen said. "For forgiving me for not being honest from the start." "Thank you for caring enough to come in the first place," Marcus replied. "For seeing that my sons needed help and being brave enough to offer it, even knowing how complicated the truth would be." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, then Carmen asked, "What happens now? With the boys, I mean. They're doing so much better, but recovery isn't linear. There will be setbacks." "Then we'll handle them together," Marcus said. "As a family. That's what we do now. We face things together instead of alone. The boys know they can talk to us about their feelings. They know they're not alone. That's everything. They're remarkable children," Carmen said. "What they survived, what they endured, carrying that secret for so long, most adults couldn't have done it. They're so much stronger than they realize." "They get that from their mother," Marcus said. "Olivia was the strongest person I ever knew. Stubborn as hell but strong. The boys have her spirit. They have your steadiness too," Carmen pointed out. "Your stability. Together, Olivia's strength and your stability, they're going to grow up to be incredible people." "We'll make sure of it," Marcus said with determination. "All of us together." Inside the apartment, neither of them noticed that Ethan had woken up and padded quietly to the balcony door. He stood there for a moment, watching his father and Carmen talking, seeing how comfortable they were with each other, how they'd become a team. He thought about his mother and how much he missed her. He always would. But he also thought about how good it felt to finally tell the truth, to not carry the secret anymore, to have Carmen and his father knowing what had really happened that day. He thought about the promise he'd made to his mother in the car, to tell everyone he hadn't been there. He'd kept that promise for 18 months, and it had nearly destroyed him and his brother. But now the promise was broken, the truth was out, and instead of the terrible consequences he'd feared, He'd found understanding and love and support. Sometimes Ethan realized breaking a promise was the right thing to do. Sometimes keeping a secret hurt more than revealing it. His mother had been wrong to make him promise. She'd been sick and scared and not thinking clearly. But that was okay. People made mistakes, even people you loved. Even people who loved you back. "I forgive you, Mom," Ethan whispered to himself, watching his father and Carmen through the glass. "And I'm going to be okay. We're all going to be okay." He turned and padded back to bed, crawling in beside his brother, who stirred sleepily. "Where'd you go?" Elliot mumbled. "Just checking on Dad and Carmen," Ethan whispered back. "They're talking. They're happy." "Good," Elliot said, already drifting back to sleep. "I like it when people are happy." "Me too," Ethan agreed, closing his eyes and feeling, for the first time in 18 months, truly at peace. In the morning, Marcus made pancakes, terribly because he'd never quite mastered the art, but the boys ate them anyway and pretended they were delicious. Carmen made real breakfast to supplement the burnt pancakes, and they all sat together at the kitchen table, laughing and talking and planning their day. It was ordinary. It was messy. It was imperfect. It was healing. And it was exactly what they all needed. Outside, the city woke up around them, full of other families with their own secrets and struggles and stories. But inside the Chambers penthouse, in that moment, 4 people who'd found each other through tragedy sat together in the morning light and chose to be a family. Not the family they'd planned to be. Not the family they'd once been. But a family nonetheless, built on truth and forgiveness and the courage to face the past in order to build a future. Carmen looked around the table at Marcus and the twins, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. She'd come to this family seeking redemption, trying to ease her guilt by helping the children of the woman she couldn't save. What she'd found instead was so much more. She'd found purpose. She'd found belonging. She'd found a family who needed her as much as she needed them. And in helping them heal, she'd healed herself. That, Carmen thought as she watched Ethan and Elliot argue good-naturedly over the last pancake, was the real miracle. Not that she'd managed to last longer than the 17 nannies before her. But that in reaching out to help 2 traumatized little boys, she'd saved herself too. Love, she'd learned, worked like that. It expanded to fill whatever space you gave it. It healed both the giver and the receiver. It transformed strangers into family and turned grief into grace. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be hard days, difficult memories, moments of pain and loss. But they would face those moments together with honesty and courage and love. And that would make all the difference.